Hey guys, welcome to CakeWalk Cambridge. I'm Aisha and today you're watching chapter 18 Variation. This chapter goes hand in hand with inheritance, so I suggest you study these one after the other. Let's get started. So the basic, what is variation? Variations are the differences between individuals of the same species. So this is a one mark definition. You can't go wrong. You've missed out a word, you lose a mark. Also, to give you an example of variation so that you remember it, imagine the class of football being a species, and then you have different footballs, like one will have hexagons and pentagons, one will just have pentagons, one will be yellow. So those are like the differences between the footballs. So in the same way, variations are the differences between individuals of the same species. Okay? It is derived from the word variety. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So you have two types, okay? So you actually have four broad categories of variation, okay? But these are the first two types. So genotypic variation and phenotypic variation. The word genotypic gives itself away. That means it is controlled by genes. So you'll have a gene for growing tall, for um, a gene for your eye color, a gene for your hair color. So it's brought about by genes. So an example is eye color. And obviously, since it is brought about by genes, you get your genes from your mom and dad. So it is inherited. It is inherited from the parents. Okay. It is present in the body as genetic material. So obviously, genes are present as genetic material, DNA in the nucleus. Okay, so I would say one, the third and fourth point are important, and you can always give an example because sometimes you get marks for like distinguishing. And phenotypic variation is brought about the environment and genes. So this is actually the best example. So skin color. So you may naturally be born with light skin, but if you play sports regularly, then you probably get a tan, and so you may be a little darker, and that happens. So, for example, I was born a very fair baby, but I had like this condition where I had to be put under the lights. Okay, and so I got a tan, and from that time, I've not really got my color back. Okay, so that's basically how it is. Phenotypic variation is not always inherited from the parent because it is brought about by the environment and genes. It is not completely inherited from the parent, okay? Because obviously the environment plays a role in it. So that is a very important point. So not fully inherited. It is not inherited from the parent. It's controlled by genes and the environment. And it is expressed as your external appearance, okay? For example, you look at a cat, okay, and you see like he has black fur and black has also black skin, dark skin, also been brought about by environmental factors. Then that's basically the external appearance, okay? That's your phenotypic variation. So usually this doesn't come, but like it's a one marker or two marker, use these 2 points, okay? And an example is always good. Now, this continuous and discontinuous variation is how you portray phenotypic and genotypic variation. So, continuous variation is basically it results in a range of phenotypes between two extremes. So, if you look at height, okay, I've written height. Sorry, I made this presentation some time ago. So, okay. So basically, if so, you have humans supposing ranging from supposing teenagers 160 centimeters to 180 centimeters, and between 160 and 180 you'll have 161, 161.5, 164, 165. So you have two extremes, 180 and 160, and you have a range between these two, okay? That is continuous variation, and so it is represented as a histogram. So histogram is basically a bar chart with no spaces in between each of the bars and the bar and the axis. It is all clubbed together. So you kind of see a trend, okay? And because every value, so that's 160.5, 160.4, every value has a result. So someone will be having that height always. So it's continuous variation. Discontinuous variation is basically a number of phenotypes with no intermediates. So what does that mean? Tongue rolling, okay? So you would either roll your tongue or not roll your tongue. I can roll my tongue. Okay, so you can either do it or not do it. It's a yes and no kind of situation. Okay, and it is mostly caused by genes alone. So that's genotypic variation. For example, blood group in humans, you're either AB, or O. That's it. 4, it's represented by bar charts, which means there are spaces, equal spaces between the bars and the bar and the axis. Now, this was an MCQ. I think it's actually important because I used to get it in all my mock exams and my friends always got it wrong. So supposing this is the size of tomatoes in centimeters, okay, or like the mass in grams, sorry, the mass in grams. And then you have tomatoes from farm A and tomatoes from farm B, okay, and this is what they have shown in the question. This is A and then B. Okay, so the question was an MCQ. I've seen this like in so many papers. The question was, what kind of variation does this graph show? So continuous, discontinuous, continuous, and discontinuous, or none? Now the answer here is continuous and discontinuous variation, because as you can see, between A and B, okay, so if you take A as one big bar and B as one big bar, there is discontinuous variation because there is like a huge separation between A and B, it's discontinuous. But within A, it's like a histogram format, and within B, it's a histogram format, so it's continuous. So the answer is discontinuous and continuous. Don't get confused. It's like an actually very easy concept, I assure you. Mutation. Okay, this part is really important, especially for your years ahead. So let's get this concept clear. So this is the most basic definition. It is a change in the base sequence of DNA. Now, when the base sequence of DNA changes, the amino acids, the sequence of amino acids strung together by ribosomes changes as well, obviously, because bases correspond to amino acids. So if a base changes, the sequence changes, then the sequence of amino acids consequently changes. So this is a genetic change, okay? Mutation is the way in which new alleles are formed, okay? It is a spontaneous genetic change. And basically there are some chemicals like tar and some carcinogens and ionizing radiation that increase the rate of mutation. So over time, mutation happens like always, okay? For example, bacteria, some bacteria become resistant to antibiotics. Why? Because there is a mutation. If there's a change in the base sequence, okay? There's a change in their DNA, basically. And so different proteins are produced, okay? It has a different cell wall that kind of becomes resistant to the work of antibiotics, okay? So it is a change in and this kind of mutation the rate of it can be increased by ionizing radiation or some chemicals, and this is not always a good thing, okay? Mutation is not always a good thing. So now we're going to look into some examples and the consequences of mutation. Sickle cell anemia, you may get this for around 8 marks or something in your structured paper and a few MCQs. So let's go through this, and I've written it in point form. Make sure you understand every point. So what is sickle cell anemia? It is a condition where people have abnormal hemoglobin and their red blood cells are sickle shaped. Okay, so your normal red blood cell is like a biconcave disc, like this, kind of like when you see it. But in sickle cell anemia, kind of becomes like this. Okay, so now because of this weird shape, it gets stuck in arteries. Okay, so now this is the consequence of sickle cell anemia. These red blood cells get stuck in arteries. They prevent faster oxygenation of blood. They prevent the faster diffusion of gases and gas exchange. They may cause chest pain, and they may cause like a heart stroke and a coronary heart disease. Okay, as a result of this. Okay, so basically, as you know, you have different alleles of a gene. An allele is a version of a gene. So for sickle cell anemia, you get the recessive allele. So now what are the two alleles? Let me just write it down. So you have HbA, which is for normal hemoglobin, and HbS. Okay, this is the recessive allele. So if someone has HbA and HbS, okay, this is like incomplete dominance, where you will have normal hemoglobin, but some of your red blood cells may be sickle shaped. Okay, but basically this is the recessive allele. Okay, HbS, the allele for sickle cell anemia, is always recessive. Okay, so and sometimes in your mark schemes and in your papers, HbA is also written as HbN. Okay, don't forget that. They're the same. Okay, but S is always for the recessive allele for sickle cell anemia. So, but this allele, the HBS allele, also makes people resistant to malaria. Why? Because of the weird shape of the red blood cell produced as a result of this genetic change. The malarial parasite, that is Plasmodium, it cannot invade the red blood cells. So it cannot infect people, so people don't get malaria. They basically have like a system to fight malaria out of the body, okay, because of the sickle cell anemia allele. Okay, whereas the people who have both the recessive alleles, that is HBS, HBS, they are homozygous recessive, as we have learned in chapter 17, okay, they acquire sickle cell anemia. Now, acquiring sickle cell anemia means that you can die very soon because I just explained to you what it does to you in your arteries, okay? So the production of this faulty hemoglobin and these sickle cell red blood cells lowers fitness. Now, what is fitness? We will come to this definition later. Fitness is the probability of it is the probability of an organism to reproduce and survive in the environment they are found in. Okay, that is basically how well they are adapted to the environment. So the production of faulty hemoglobin lowers the fitness of a human being. And so these people who have the recessive alleles die before reproducing. Okay, so because they don't reproduce, the HBS allele is not passed on to the next generation. This also is a result of selective pressure and natural selection because sickle cell anemia causes people to die. Okay, so nature dictates that it shouldn't like be present, okay, in your genetic code. So because people die before reproducing, and so the HBS allele is not passed on. However, we have also discussed that the allele makes people resistant to malaria. So now we will see how this allele, the HBS allele, is kept in the population. Okay. So as I said, however, heterozygous individuals, HbA, HbS, survive malarial attack due to the sickle cell anemia allele being present. And so these people can reproduce because they have survived it. And so their kids will acquire the sickle cell anemia allele. And that is how the sickle cell anemia allele remains in the population. That's why it is never opted out. Okay, so now we're gonna look at the Punnett square diagram and the crossover of how the allele stays in the population. It's very important. You can get this for a good 5 marks. Okay, so again, N here is for normal blood, S is for sickle cell anemia. So you have the phenotypes, that is sickle cell trait and sickle cell trait. Okay, the trait is there, but they produce normal hemoglobin. So you have heterozygous parents, okay, because they have one allele for normal blood, one allele for sickle cell. Same here. Okay, so we draw this out here. And then what are the results you get? You get HB and HBN, which is normal blood, HBN, HBS, HBN, HBS, which is the sickle cell trait, and HBS, HBS, which is the sickle cell anemia, finally. Okay, so you have a 25% chance for normal, 50% chance for sickle cell trait, and 25% chance for sickle cell anemia. And that is basically how the crossing of the diagram works because the allele still remains in the population. So this person here, the 25%, whoever gets this, these people may die, but these people will be able to crossbreed and produce offspring again, and that will result in a 50% sickle cell trait ratio as well. That is how the allele remains in the population. I hope you understood this. Please email me if you have any doubts, because you usually have maps in your papers that ask you to describe the spread of sickle cell anemia. You're supposed to relate it to malaria. They'll usually give you the map of Africa. So if you have doubts on how to answer the question, please let me know. But you can use my previous 2 slides to answer it, because they're pretty much mark scheme answers. Now we're coming to the chapter adaptation. Adaptation, now these are 3 definitions taken straight from your syllabus. You have to know every word. Okay, I'm not put anything in bold because everything is as important as the other. 1 or 2 mark definitions, you have to know it. And if you don't know it, I will be disappointed. So please make me happy. So an adaptive feature is an inherited feature that helps an organism to survive and reproduce in its environment. Now this term seems familiar because I used it before. Surviving and reproducing in the environment. Where did we hear this? In fitness here. Fitness is the probability of an organism surviving and reproducing in the environment in which it is found. Okay, you need to know this definition. And an adaptive feature is also the inherited functional features of an organism that increase its fitness. So this last part has consolidated this part, increases its fitness, and here it says helps to survive and reproduce in the environment. So I suggest you use the second two definitions, and usually in your paper, they ask you for these two combined. So 1A will be define adaptive feature, 1B will be define fitness. So it's, vital that you memorize these properly. Okay, now in your syllabus, it says the candidate should be able to identify features and describe the different adaptive features of xerophytes and hydrophytes. Okay, so I thought I'd break it down for you and put it there for you already, so you don't have to think too much. But usually they'll show you a picture of a xerophyte or a hydrophyte. Okay, and they will ask you to note down the observable adaptive features. So you only note down what you can see from your knowledge. Okay, what you can see in the picture. Don't write down something that you can't see. Okay, so now xerophytes. What are xerophytes? Land living plants. Okay, I've seen kids mess this up. It's a 1 mark question. Please don't mess it up. So the question will usually be, they'll show you a picture of a plant in the mud, like in like a desert or something, like madam grass or something, and they'll like give you a sentence about it and say, identify which habitat it belongs to or which class it is. You always write xerophyte. Hydrophyte is water, aquatic is an aquatic habitat. Xerophyte is a terrestrial habitat, which is land living. Okay. So these are some basic features that are present in most of xerophytic plants that are seen in mark schemes as well. So one, to reduce water loss by transpiration. So you raise humidity to reduce water loss. Plants have sunken stomata, rolled up leaves, and stomal hairs. Now to define this, you write, so if you see the plant has like curled up leaves or sunken stomata or something, you can write the sunken stomata raises humidity. Okay. Um, uh, decreases, no, it raises humidity, um, causes an increase of concentration of water vapor outside the plant, and so water vapor can't diffuse outside the plant by diffusion, okay, because the concentration gradient is then negative. Okay, you write like that. Then to reduce water loss by being eaten by other animals, you have leaves reduced to spine, as in the cactus. Then to obtain sufficient water from the soil, you have long roots and an extensive network of long roots. Because sometimes on the surface the ground is pretty hard and dry. So when roots like dig deep, you can like absorb water because deep into the ground you have more water. Reducing water loss by transpiration, thick waxy cuticle, and storage of water in bulgy stems, as in the cactus again. Now, hydrophytes, water-living plants. So they stay afloat on the surface of water. How? Because they have large and many air spaces in their spongy mesophyll. If you don't remember what the spongy mesophyll is, it is the layer below the palisade layer in a cell. Okay, it is where a certain amount of photosynthesis takes place. And also the leaves of hydrophytes are large, so they provide a large surface area so the plant can stay afloat like a lotus. Then how is the hydrophyte waterproof? It has a waxy cuticle. Anchorage, long roots. Now the thing is, hydrophytes also have flexible stems because they don't have lignin in the xylem of their stems. Why? So that the plant can move with the wind instead of resisting changes to the wind. Because if it resists changes to the wind, it may be uprooted from the soil, okay, in the water. So it moves with the wind. So to not resist changes of the wind, it has a flexible stem. And gas exchange, stomata is only present on the upper surface. It is not present on the lower surface because the lower surface faces water. Those are your hydrophytic adaptations. Pretty easy. So don't write about the roots and the stuff if you don't see it in the picture. Always look for the picture. Look at the picture and make notes. And now another thing of your syllabus also said that a candidate should be able to identify and interpret adaptations. Again, this question you have to look at the picture of the animal given. They'll always give you a black and white picture. If you don't see it, don't write it. You're not getting your mark. Observable is like always written in bold letters. Okay. So these are typical adaptations. So one is reducing heat loss in cold conditions. You have small ears. So like the Arctic fox has really small pointed ears to reduce heat loss from its ears. Then camouflaging from predators. So you have different skin color in different seasons. That's another fox. I forgot the name, but there is a fox that does this as well, changes color. Many animals that are prey do it a lot so that they can hide from predators. Then escaping from predators, fast movement, long legs. Flight, powerful wing muscles, that is basically flying, birds basically. Then this is like for a camel. To keep sand out of the eyes, it has thick eyelashes. Then to absorb heat, you have black skin. Like the polar bear has black skin but white fur. Okay, so the black skin helps to absorb heat, and then woolly fur helps to trap heat. Okay, and like other general adaptations, so like a camel or any animal has hooves, so it can, like, it has like a padded surface that it can walk on the sand because its hooves don't sink into the sand in the desert. Okay, and then it has a hump to store fat. So basically you have these kind of adaptations. Just look at the picture and you should know it, because these are all like grade 6 grade 7 things, but you just have to apply them again when you look at the picture. These are some examples. And then you have very, like, okay, I keep saying this to every new part of the chapter, but this is really important, trust me. Okay, because after, like, from this point on, you get really long mark answers and long answers. So let's do this. Okay, so what is evolution? Evolution is a word we hear a lot. Okay, the theory of evolution is framed by Charles Darwin. You should know that, that scientist. I don't know if it could come in a paper. I think it has come. Okay, so it is basically the change in adaptive features of a population over time as the result of natural selection. This is a 3-mark definition. If you lose 1 mark, it will be so frustrating. So just remember, it is the change in adaptive features of a population as the result of natural selection. Okay, we're going to go over the process of natural selection, but it'll be good if you just memorize these before we go there so you can apply it. Now, so we learned that an adaptive feature is an inherited feature of an organism to increase its fitness. But what is adaptation? Adaptation is the process resulting from natural selection by which populations become better suited to their environment over many generations. So adaptation is basically when an organism acquires adaptive features. It changed, like a giraffe. It first had a short neck, and then over time, over generations, this is very important phrase, over many generations, its neck became longer, so it could reach leaves, like better leaves, on tall trees. So it is a process resulting from natural selection. Natural selection is the process by which um, irrelevant or useless alleles basically get opted out of the environment, opted out of opted out of genetic code. I will show you how. Okay. This is an example. So the development of strains of antibiotic resistant bacteria is an example of evolution by natural selection. Natural selection is basically when nature and selective pressure selects individuals with desired features that help them live and thrive in their habitat or environment. Okay. And what it does is the others die before reproducing and passing on the genetic code. So ultimately, only the useful genes and alleles will be present in the population as a result of natural selection. So natural selection, this is the whole process of natural selection lifted from your syllabus. So you must know it. This could come for a 5-6 marker, 1 mark for every point. So first you have a variation within populations. There is a production of many offspring, okay? Then there's obviously a competition for resources because there are so many organisms. There's always scarcity, opportunity cost, economics, okay? So there's a competition for resources and a struggle for survival, okay? So what happens is basically then the organisms with the beneficial variations that help them live in their environment for a longer time, they obviously are better adapted to the environment, and so they reproduce and pass on the genetic code that they possess. Whereas the organisms with variations that don't help them survive or don't help them thrive in their environment, they die before they can pass on the genetic code, obviously, because they're not suited to their environment. And so this is how useful beneficial alleles are passed on to the next generation. That is natural selection. I'd say pause this, take a screenshot, memorize this, okay? And don't forget it, ever, okay? Don't ever forget it. Now just imagine, keep in mind this is natural selection, okay? Now we're going to look at the differences between artificial selection and natural selection. Okay, I made a mistake. I should have actually explained artificial selection to you first. So artificial selection, as the name suggests, it is done by humans. It is done artificially. Okay. So what happens is if there is a farmer who wants to obtain thick wool, okay, but that is short, like short thick wool, like not long strands of wool. What it will do is it will take a sheep with thick wool and take another sheep with a short wool of short length and basically make them breed together. Okay, after it breeds together, the farmer will choose offspring with the desired characteristics. Whichever offspring has kind of short, thick wool, they will choose those and breed them together again. And this happens over many generations repeatedly. And your final result is only sheep with short, thick wool. Okay, so that is artificial selection. So artificial selection is done by humans. Okay, it is done for humans' benefits, obviously. So here the farmer wants to have short, thick wool to make fur coats or to sell better in the market because that's in demand. Okay, whereas natural selection may require sheep to have longer strands of wool to keep them warmer. Okay, and to trap more heat. But humans are doing it for their own benefit. It is a faster process because here the humans are like quickly selecting them, breeding them, choosing the offspring, doing it. So it happens faster. It produces organisms with desired traits for humans. And okay, wait, this is a mistake. This should be here. Sorry. And this should be here. It does not help evolution because evolution is a process resulting from natural selection only. Okay, and it aims to increase the fitness of an organism. This here does not increase the fitness of an organism whatsoever. Okay. Now, natural selection is done by nature's selective pressure. Okay, it is done to improve fitness. So, it basically is done to help the organism. It produces organisms with beneficial traits. Because it is done by nature and because it is done for the organism's benefit, it is a slow process. It takes place over hundreds of years. Okay, and it facilitates biodiversity because there will always be variations between organisms of the same species. They'll all be adapted to their own environment better. Okay, so it facilitates biodiversity. Those are the differences. You should know all five. These are 5 points because you're most likely to blank out and forget two in your exam paper. So no five, just now, okay? And selective breeding. Okay, selective breeding is basically done by artificial selection. I already explained this to you. It is a selection by humans of individuals with desirable features like a sheep with thick wool, a sheep with short wool. It crosses these individuals to produce the next generation. Then it selects offspring showing the desirable features, that is, offspring with short and thick wool. And then these offsprings are further crossed. You have to write, after this point, you have to write they are further crossed. And this process is carried over many generations to improve crop, plants, and animals. So you have to write that it is a further cross is done. So after this, you write further cross. And then you have to write about the generation point. Okay. So guys, that was it. That was variation. Quite a short, simple chapter, 30-minute video almost. I hope this helped you. If you have any doubts, please feel free to email me. My email is in the channel description. All the best, guys. Like this video. Please comment if it helped you. Share this video with your friends and subscribe to my channel. Let's get through this together.